Dragon Ballers, if you're looking to buy Dragon Ball Super or One Piece sealed product, make sure to get 5% off using my link to Mystic TCG down in the description. You can also sell cards to them using their Facebook link, which is also down in the description. Yo, what's going on, One Piecers? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to share with you guys my deck profile for Blue Doflamingo. I feel like as of late, I've been a Captain Kid only channel, and I want to diversify the content a little bit. And as I mentioned in a couple videos, Blue Dofi is the deck that I've been having the most fun playing. And over this past weekend, I actually put a lot more time into this deck. I got to shout out my friend Ivan, who is also just a Dofi one trick. Me and him put a lot of brain power together to figure out how we think the deck should be played and built. And I'm going to go over that in today's video. I'm going to share with you guys the exact reasoning for our picks, as well as how we approach certain matchups and try to get the most success out of it. But anyways, that being said, if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. Let's jump right on in. Of course, we start with our leader. I think at this point, it's pretty apparent that Dofi is just better than Blue Croc. Blue Croc seems interesting, but the Dawn Minus, I think, is really hard to manage when you're in a color that's not ramping. So I think Dofi's better for that. And the leader ability is very strong. Dawn 2 just means you're always hitting for a great number. Hitting for 7k consistently is really nice because you're either forcing damage or forcing more than one card out of your opponent's hand, which is a really nice thing. And the leader gets you a lot of value. And one of the themes of this deck is that we're pulling cards from places that aren't our hand. So we're saving hand size, which is really important in this game for playing defense. So we're pulling cards from our deck as well as our drop area, and our leader is one of our ways of doing that by playing a 4 cost or less Warlord from the top of the deck. And of course, I wish I had the altar at leader, but I can't max ready this game, and DVS would just be way too much money. But my deck does still look pretty nice in my opinion. All right, so we're starting off with 4 Peronas. Now, I've been seeing lists here and there that aren't playing Perona, and I definitely find it very interesting. I did a video a week or two ago covering a few deck lists from some recent events, and the first place Dofi list chose not to play Perona. Like I said, I definitely found it interesting. The rationale I got for that was it forces you not to have to mulligan super hard for a card that pretty much falls off late game, because Dofi, in a deck like Dofi, it's very hard to commit Dawn to this as swing. Like, you can do it in certain situations, don't get me wrong, but it feels kind of rough. But I do like Perona for a few reasons. Obviously, she sets up our deck stacking, which is where a lot of the skill expression comes in this deck. You know, stacking what you want to draw the next turn and then what you want to play off your leader ability after that. And I do like Perona because she can pick off things like Nami Searcher in red. She can pick off things like Momonosuke, Jewelry Bonnie. So I still think Perona is worth playing. I know in set 2 we're getting a Dofi that is basically just a better Perona. I'm pretty sure it's Perona's exact effect, and it also has an additional ability. So yeah, I think the card is worth playing, but if you guys don't play Perona for whatever reason, definitely let me know down in the comments why that is, because I'm curious. All right, then we have our 4 Dofi blockers. More ways to stack the deck. Being a bit more costly than Perona is a bit rough because, like, if you don't open Perona, this is an okay card to keep, but you know, you're not going to be using your leader effect until the 5 Dawn turn or the 6 Dawn turn, which is definitely a little bit rough, but the stat line is actually really good. For a 3 cost, being a 4k is great. All you have to do is equip 1 Dawn to it for the ability to make it a lethal attacker, but also the blocker is really nice too. So this deck has a really high abundance of blockers, which makes it very defensive inherently. Then we have our 4 copies of our classic 1-drop blocker. We have the Law blocker here. Yeah, not much to say about it, but I do want to point out a pretty funny combo that I actually find myself doing a lot. Maybe it's because I'm a bit unlucky, I don't know. But we're playing our 4 Marshall D Teach. Now, Teach is super important. I'm going to talk about why in a second. But the funny thing I end up doing a lot of the time is, let's say I'm in like a late game, like 10 Dawn situation. I stack my deck with a Dofi or with a Perona, and I find a Law off that top 5 because, of course, I didn't draw it earlier in the game. So what I'll do is I can play Law off my leader ability because he is a 7 Warlord, and I can play a Teach from my hand, bounce the Law to my hand, and then replay it for 1. That's a really convoluted way of getting a blocker out of the deck, but it does work sometimes. Like, it protects big battle cards that I need to live, or protects my life, you know, protects me from dying. So that combo does work out more often than I would expect it to, which is kind of funny. But Teach is great. Teach is actually a card that helps swing matchups, and it kind of makes it very important to find early, which is another reason that I like playing Perona. Because against red, this is really important to hit their Nico Robin. Against green, this is very important to hit their Okiku. This can hit very key 3-drops that our opponents are playing. And honestly, sometimes I feel like a matchup is swayed by having this in my top 5 versus not having it. So I think 4 Teach is great. his stat line is not incredible, but I think his removal aspect is really good, and bounce to hand removal is a lot better in One Piece than it is in Dragon Ball. Like, yeah, you might still be giving them a 1k counter back to their hand, but the fact this game has Summoning Sickness makes that removal a lot better, because it takes them way more turns to actually set up their Okiku or their Nico Robin. So yeah, Teach is really, really good in my opinion, and sometimes necessary. Then we're playing 4 copies of Mihawk, the 2k counter version. Really, this card is only ever a 2k counter. I'd never actually cast it. You could cast it with your leader ability to be picked up from your drop area later, but that's a pretty niche scenario. Then we have 4 copies, whoops, skipping ahead a little bit, 4 copies of Boa Hancock. This card's incredible. I love playing it off the top of my leader. You gotta really pay attention to the times where it's okay to invest cards to protect her, because you got to keep in mind that when she gets to the next turn, if she's able to attack or block, she's going to draw you a card back most of the time, which is really, really good. So if you have to invest like 2 cards to protect her, it's probably worth it more often than not, especially if you stack your deck in a way where the next card is Gecko Moria. This is definitely the best one to play off of your leader, because he picks cards up from the drop area. And that's what I was talking about before with the theme of the deck, kind of just being this ability to pull cards from resources that are not your hand to preserve your hand size. So what I'll do a lot of the time is, if I've stacked my deck and the next card I'm playing off my leader is Boa, and then the turn after that, the next card I'm playing is Gecko, I will actually, usually spend 1 or 2 cards to protect Boa. And the perfect scenario is, this is in rest mode. My opponent attacks with a 6k. I protect it with a Mihawk for 7k. And then I play Moria the next turn to pick up that Mihawk. And it's like I've lost nothing, and I've actually plussed, because Boa is now going to attack or block and draw me a card. So this is like the ideal sort of situation for managing these resources and protecting your board that way. And that is one other thing I guess I should mention too here, is like the fact that Dofi plays the cards in rest off the top is definitely a bit awkward. Obviously, it leaves them open to being attacked, but what you can think of them as in that scenario are blockers. If this thing eats up an attack, it's just about as good as a blocker. Yes, blockers are better because they're able to choose which attack get redirected to them, but if this thing eats up an attack, you should be pretty happy about that. And then again, in the case of Boa, you want to be protecting it if it makes sense to do so you can get even more value off of it. Now we're going to talk about an engine that I've gone back and forth on so much, and that starts with 4 Kuma. I've seen some lists not even play this, but I think Kuma is really nice. Kuma is great because he is the one warlord you can play off your leader ability that comes in rest mode and can actually punish your opponent if they choose to attack into it. And how do you punish your opponent for attacking into Kuma? By having one of your 4 Pacifista Vanillas in your hand. So yeah, this is an engine that I've tinkered with a lot with this deck, and I'm finally really happy with it, which is why I'm bringing you guys the profile. So notice I'm not playing any of the blocker Pacifistas, mostly because I feel like this deck has so many blockers, like way more blockers than most other decks. Between Kuma, Boa, the 3-drop Dofi, I just don't feel like we need any more blockers. But yeah, I also love too that if you block with Kuma, or if Kuma gets attacked while it's in rest, you play the Pacifista on your opponent's turn and it bypasses the Summoning Sickness of the game. That is so incredible, like for applying pressure and just catching back up on the board state. I love that. Yeah, so I think this is a great ratio. I really want to maximize the ability to pull off this combo, which is why I like 4 Pacifista Vanillas. And we're also playing another card that works with this engine, and that is Sentomaru. Sentomaru is a card that I was not playing for a while because I didn't really like the way it played out, but I've kind of come up with a different way to actually utilize it, and that is by playing him and then using his ability in the same turn. So obviously you have to have at least 6 Dawn to do that, but the reason I didn't like him at first is because you could play him out on turn 3. Let's say you missed a deck stacker in your mulligan, and you play him out on turn 3. Well, he's susceptible to getting rested by Okiku, he's susceptible to getting popped by Jet Pistol, or maybe like an Otamu Nico Robin. These decks have these ways to deal with this card before you can actually get value out of his activate main. Well, I play him in a way where I just try not to allow my opponent to do that. So I'll play him on my 6 Dawn turn, I'll put a Dawn under him, pay 2, and start playing Pacifistas from the deck. And I've had a lot of board states where I'm just playing like 3 to 4 Pacifistas out of my deck per game. And it's really interesting when that happens because you put your opponent in a scenario where they have to answer one of these 2 cards. A lot of times they can't answer both. Let's say red, for example, they want a Jet Pistol. Well, do you Jet Pistol Sentomaru, which if you don't Jet Pistol Sentomaru, he's going to just play more Pacifistas out of the deck? or do you jet pistol the actual Pacifista, who is more of an attacking threat? Puts your opponent in a really weird bind. I think most of the time they should probably hit the Centauro, so I can't play more Pacifistas. But again, they might really feel the pressure of the Pacifista itself, so they opt to let the Centauro live. A lot of times I will also keep him in active mode so he can't be swung over just for multiple turns, so I can play more Pacifistas and make more board presence. And this is a way, again, for us to conserve our hand resources by pulling and playing cards from other areas. So I've really liked these specific ratios for these cards. But anyways, moving on, our one boss card is 3 copies of the 9-drop Mihawk. Now, in this particular build, I am not playing the 7-drop Dofi for a few reasons. One of which, for 2 plays that are relatively similarly expensive. Obviously, Dofi comes down a turn earlier, but for the fact that both the cards cost a similar amount of Dawn and do a similar thing, I'd rather just have the Mihawk. It's a bigger beater. It's a bit stickier because it's harder for your opponent to actually remove this. Obviously, in the blue mirror, they can actually kill your Dofi, so they can't really do that to Mihawk, at least on play. And Mihawk is a super important card in the green matchup, in my opinion, because you can deal with their 7-drop kid very easily, but you cannot deal with their 8-drop kid nearly as easily. You have no effect in the game that just kills it on play besides 10-drop Kaido. And you have to basically establish as many of these as you possibly can against green so that you can contest the 8-drop kid. It's super essential. Basically, if you're not able to do that, you're going to get outvalued very quickly because now you're starting with these characters like maybe Centauro or Pacifista that just have way less base attack power, and every turn is just going to be you putting a bunch of Dawn on these cards to get blocked or out-countered, whatever the case is. So having a Mihawk that only really needs 1 Dawn to contest the kid very well, either requiring a block or 2 cards out of their hand, is really important, really nice. So yeah, I'm opting for 3 Mihawk here, and I got to shout out Ivan once again for helping me come to this conclusion. Now, because we play 3 Mihawk and no Dofi, we are playing 4 Desert Spada and no Love Mellow. I know that 0 Love Mellow might be kind of crazy. I don't love it myself. But if we're going to be spending the majority of our Dawn every turn, whether it's for Sentomaru or for Mihawk, it doesn't really make sense to have a 2-cost counter in our hand that we can't use very often. At least that's the rationale that we kind of came to. Desert Spada, great for stacking our deck, helps synergize with our leader, helps set up our draw for the next turn. And I love, too, that like we can play 3 Mihawk, and there's so many effects that dig for it that we can see it earlier where like another deck might want to play 4 of this if they find it to be that important. But yeah, Desert Spada, I also love playing 4 because the trigger is so incredible. It's literally a pot of greed. So yeah, that is really awesome. And the last 4 cards we have are Alvida, just our 2K counters. Yeah, we're playing 8 2K counters in this deck, but the fact that Gecko Moria can pick up our Mihawk 2K counters from the drop, I would consider that to be a pretty strong ability and make it okay that we're playing 8 2K counters. I'd like to play 10, but again, the fact that Moria picks them up makes it pretty okay for me. But overall, that's the profile. I hope I've explained a bunch of matchup stuff as I was going through the card choices. But if you have any questions on specific matchups, definitely let me know down in the comments. I didn't really talk too much about purple specifically because at that point it becomes a battle of the bigger battle cards. And I think in that matchup, Dofi wants to kind of become the aggressor. And a really key thing in that matchup is playing Boa early and then defending it, because if Kaido is spending their early turns ramping, they're not going to be able to get us off the board effectively without swinging. So if you can protect this and then start swinging back on them for 6 or 7K and drawing cards, that I think is a pretty good way to get some value against Kaido early. But yeah, if you have any more specific matchup questions, please do drop them down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.